I am a student in the Social and Human Services program at Gaston College. I am required to practice interviewing skills with an adult volunteer. I appreciate your willingness to work with me on my class assignment. Before we start, please let me know if you're comfortable with this session being recorded.
Yes.
You may choose to talk about topics of real concern to you, or you may prefer to role play an issue that is not necessarily linked to you. Please let me know before we start whether you're talking about yourself or role playing.
I'll be talking about myself.
Topics not permissible due to my status as a beginner trainee is depression, anxiety, any other emotional concerns, domestic violence, parenting advice, relationship advice, thoughts of harming myself or someone else, physical or sexual abuse of any type, topics that will not be discussed with anyone else, or topics that I might not be comfortable with discussing due to the nature of our relationship or my training level. Here are some important dimensions of our work together. Confidentiality. As a student, I cannot offer any form of legal confidentiality. As a student, I need to submit a videotape for my college instructor and or classmates as part of my course requirements. To achieve this, I will be recording our session for personal use and learning, and both of us will be visible in the video recording. In case you feel uncomfortable at any point, we can turn off the recorder. However, I must submit a complete recording of our session for grading purposes. You will find that the recording does not affect our practice sessions as long as we are both feel comfortable. As it is important to mention that without any additional permission, all recordings and writing transcripts will be destroyed at the end of this course.
Okay.
I am an inexperienced interviewer. I cannot do formal counseling. This practice session helps me learn interviewing skills. I need feedback from you about my performance and what you found helpful. I may give you a form that asks you to evaluate how helpful I was. Thank you for your support by agreeing to volunteer your time during today's interview.
No problem.
Hello, Ms. Raish. How are we doing today?
So today I feel peaceful, content, tired, and thankful.
Okay, I see. Continue.
So I'm thankful that I am off of work for the next 2 days. I am peaceful and content because I don't have any stress or anything to worry about, and I'm tired because I had to work last night.
I see. Well, are there any specific topics you want to discuss today?
So why don't we just start from the beginning?
Okay, you can start whenever you're ready.
Okay, so my childhood was, I would say, good, but it did have its downfalls that probably affected, my life later on. And just in the beginning, my parents weren't very, lovey-dovey. We didn't get any hugs, and they didn't tell us that they loved us very often, but in a way, we understood that they did. And I vowed as I grew up that I would not make the same mistake with my children because I saw how it affected me emotionally later on in life.
I see. Your childhood, it sounds like your childhood had a major effect on you. And, because your parents weren't very lovey-dovey and didn't give you hugs, this made you vow that you wouldn't make the same mistakes with your children because you saw how the emotional toll that it took on you as later on in life. Is that correct?
Yes. So I noticed that the older that I got, the more I searched for that emotional attachment outside of the household that later spiraled into some negative activities later on in life that I wouldn't like to elaborate on right now. So back to my childhood. I grew up in a predominantly white or Caucasian part of town, and my school was predominantly white. So I had a fear of my own population of people that I didn't even know that I had until middle school.
It sounds like you grew up in an area that didn't have much of your race, and that caused you to have some fears that weren't unknown to you until you reached middle school.
Yeah. I determined also early in life that I was self-conscious about my looks. I was often teased in school, which made me that even more of an issue for me going through elementary up until middle school. And I spent the first 12 years of my life in a small town, which I stated earlier was predominantly white. And when I got to middle school in the 9th grade, I moved back to my hometown and had a culture shock and my grades slipped because of my focus was not on learning. I was just trying to fit in.
So if I understood you correctly, you suffered from subconscious issues in elementary and middle school due to you being teased for like the first 12 years of your life. And when you moved back to your hometown, you suffered a culture shock, which caused you to, be a little bit more subconscious and your grades started to slip. Is that correct?
Yeah. But one good thing that did come out of my middle school years was I joined a band in the 6th grade, and I played the clarinet. And as I progressed from the 6th grade up until middle and beginning of high school, I was pretty much a very talented clarinet player, and that allowed me to feel like I was a part of something. But that quickly came to an end in my first year of high school when I and the band director got into an argument over me being able to get a drink of water while we were marching in the middle of summer in Alabama, and it was 115 degrees outside. So being defiant, I decided I was going to go ahead and get a drink of water anyway, even though that he said it wasn't allowed. And that pretty much was the end of my band career that day.
It sounds like band was something you were really interested in. And when your band director got into it, it made you a little bit angry. And, that caused the end of your band career. Is that correct?
Yeah. And after my first year of high school, I realized that I was getting lots of male attention, and that ultimately changed how I thought about my looks and my self-esteem much later in life. I realized that wasn't the best thing, but it was what I needed at the time in my life, and especially with me searching for an emotional connection with someone back since early childhood.
Let's see if I heard this right. You realized that you were receiving a lot of male attention, and that changed the way you looked at yourself. And you realized later on in life that it wasn't a good thing due to you searching for the emotional connection that you didn't receive in your childhood. And that was something that you needed, that connection. So what happened when you started receiving this male attention?
So pretty much 100% of my friends were all males. And with that encounter came some sexual activities. And that is pretty much how I got through high school.
How does this make you feel talking about this now, in current time?
So talking about it now, it makes me feel like it was something that definitely developed me into the person that I am today. It definitely also negatively impacted the trajectory of my life, although it took me years to redirect onto the right path. I do feel like that if I didn't go through that part of my life, I would not be where I am now.
As I hear you saying this, I noticed that you seem to have tensed up and become a little bit uncomfortable. Why is that?
Well, talking about my past, it gives me anxiety.
Like you, I have experienced anxiety when talking about my past as well. And I was just recently able to get over it due to working on it in therapy. Have you considered working on it in therapy?
Yeah, that's not something that I'm actively working on, but it's probably something that I need to include in my therapy sessions.
You often come to these sessions, and I've noticed that when you talk about anything related to your past or your family, you become hesitant and overwhelmed. Is that true?
Yes, me and my parents' relationship is okay, but it definitely could be better.
Earlier, I heard you mention that your parents weren't very affectionate. Could you elaborate on how they weren't affectionate?
So I thought that they could have allowed us to better express our emotions. They believed that you had to suppress your emotions and that showing emotions was a sign of weakness.
Research has shown that using I statements can improve communication, and maybe that could help you better express your emotions to your parents.
It's more difficult to talk to my mother than it is my father.
Have you ever considered having a sit-down session with your mother and trying to figure out why she is the person that she is today?
I don't think that she would be very receptive to that conversation.
Well, what's one thing that you could do before next week to try to to improve the communication between you and your mother?
I could write her a letter telling her how I feel.
That's a great idea. It sounds like you have a plan to accomplish a lot today.
Well, thank you.
I also think that your letter will be more successful if you use I statements by sharing your feelings, so it doesn't sound like you're blaming your mother.
Yeah, I think that's very helpful.